Welcome back, engineers. In today's demo, we're going to be creating this really cool hollow vase that actually looks like it's an optical illusion. Actually, it looks like two faces looking at each other, but it's a vase. You can see it's a three-dimensional thing. You can put some flowers in there, but if you look at it from the side, it also looks like two faces. It's pretty cool. So we're going to do a hollow one of these, but we're going to start with a solid one of these because that's much easier to do. And in order to do this, we're going to have to use one of our new feature tools. So far, we've become experts with sketching. So we know all about our different sketch tools. You know, all of these up here for the most part. We've worked with constraints, we've worked with mirroring and offsets and trimming and lines and splines and points. So you are going to be using a sketch. But then if we want to turn that sketch into a three-dimensional object, the only thing that we could do before was extrude it. And we know that there's several different types of extrudes. We could extrude out, we could extrude down, we could remove, but that was the only tool we had. So you can see that that's not the only tool that OnShape has in its system. So we're going to go through some of these other tools and you'll see how they actually work. But in order to be able to complete this vase, the feature tool that you need is this Revolve tool. So that will be the one that we use to complete this. So let's go ahead and get started. So in OnShape, go ahead and create a new document. And we're going to name this Revolve Demo. Oops. And then obviously underscore your class name, underscore your last name. So we got Revolve Demo, class name, and then last name. Remember, that is the normal OnShape convention that we use when we're submitting our documents so that I can grade them. Okay, so now that we've got our new document created, we have to start with the sketch. So just like when we were extruding, we had to start with a two-dimensional sketch. We're going to be doing the same thing, except this time, instead of sketching on the top plane and then pulling it out, we're actually going to be sketching on the front plane because we're going to be revolving it around a vertical axis. So we'll start by going to the front, which means that we can hide the top and we can hide the right. So we only want to see the front plane. Okay, so in order to get this awesome shape, to try to freehand that would be kind of difficult. So there are pictures online of this, and so what you're going to do is go to Google Classroom and download the picture that goes with this assignment. So after you've got that picture downloaded, then the next thing we need to do is import it into our OnShape document. So we'll import, you'll find the picture in your files, and then after we have it imported, we should be able to see it down in the bottom here. Remember, we need to actually add it to our Part Studio by creating a sketch on the front plane and then inserting that image. And so I like to start on the origin in the top left. You can kind of put it wherever, but then that just allows the origin to stay out of the way when you're actually tracing it. Go ahead and click and drag. And initially it doesn't matter how big you make this because we're actually going to set the dimension before we do the trace. There were some people for the ornament, they did not do this, and then they realized, oh shoot, I'm going to have to go back and delete my entire trace because I can't scale a sketch up or down if I use splines. So what we'll do is, again, we'll set the dimension. So we want this vase to be, we want this vase to be 100 millimeters tall. So make sure that that height is 100, and then the width automatically adjusts to make this a scaled image and not lose any resolution. So this image should still be clear, should have a height of 100, and then remember, we don't want to sketch on the actual, we don't want to trace on the actual sketch where we have the image. So we'll confirm this, and then we'll create a new sketch, and this sketch is not on the image, so do not click on the image, make sure you click on the front plane. So when it says sketch plane for sketch 2, that should be your front plane. And then we can just rename this so we know that this is the trace sketch. So we don't get confused there. Alright, so now that we've got our sketch created on top of the image that we brought in, so this is the image sketch, we have a new one, that's our trace sketch, we're going to go ahead and start by cutting this vase in half. And the reason that we're doing that is that we're actually revolving a 2D image in a circle. And so you got to think, like, if we trace this whole thing and we revolved it around the circle, halfway around it would be on top of itself. And so you would get an error if you actually do that. So we do not want to trace this whole thing. We only want to do half of it. So then when we move that half all the way 360 degrees, it doesn't run into itself. So we'll start with a line. We need to make it a construction line. And then we need to find the middle by hovering over the top, and you should see the square. Go all the way down to the bottom, you should see the square. And now our image is cut in half with this construction line. So this construction line is actually going to end up being our mirror line as well. And we are going to do a solid line in this over the same thing. But I want you to get in the habit of cutting your image in half and not tracing the whole thing. Because if you trace the whole thing and it intersects itself, you're going to get an error. So cut that in half, and now we can start the trace. So I think the easiest way to do this is to actually start with all of your straight lines. So anything that would be like a straight line in this trace, and we're only going to be tracing the right side, that's what we'll start with. So we'll choose our straight line tool, we'll go out here to the end, and we'll go all the way in. And then we need to go down because we need this to be a closed shape. So when I still have this here, I'm going to go down and I'm going to follow along, but I'm not going all the way down till the end. Remember, this we only want to trace, so we're only going to the bottom of where this vase is, and then we'll go out here. And that would be the final one that I need, so I can press escape after I finish that. And then the only other lines that I need here are this face. And so in order to get these curves, the best tool to use is going to be the spline tool. So I'll go ahead and choose my spline tool, starting at the bottom, and carefully tracing the outline of this one side. Alright, so now we should be able to click in this space and it should highlight. So if you don't get this highlight here, it means that you have some gap in between the ends of your spline and the straight lines. So just make sure that you can have this filled in. Again, if this is not coming to highlight when you click on it, then you're going to have a problem. Because we need, just like when we extrude, we need to have a closed sketch in order to be able to do that. Alright, so now that we have this properly traced, we'll go ahead and confirm that. And then we can delete our old image. Whoa, don't mean to do that. Did not mean to do that. So we'll delete sketch 1. And then it looks like it's giving us some errors in our trace sketch. It's just the constraints that were attached to the image behind. So if we just delete our 2 constraints up there, if you have any other ones that maybe accidentally came up, that's not a problem. But this is what we should be left with, okay? So this is the, half of the profile that we're going to revolve in a circle to create the solid vase. So we'll click on that space, and then we'll choose the Revolve tool. Now, it says the face in the sketch region is to revolve. Well, that was the face of the trace sketch, so that was the actual space that we created. But then it says Revolve Axis, and notice how this is in orange. It means that you need to choose it. So it says select the axis to revolve around. So we need to click Revolve Axis, and then we need to choose this vertical line that we created right in the beginning. And then when you do that, magically, you see your solid vase appear. Pretty cool. Now, although this is a pretty cool vase, it's not really useful because you can see that it has, a top on it, it has a bottom on it, and actually, it's solid all the way through. So we are going to go ahead and create an actual useful vase, and you gotta kind of think, okay, how would we be able to make this open? We're still going to use the Revolve tool. How would we be able to make this an open vase? So if you can do this on your own, go ahead and pause the video, and so you're going to create a new part studio and try it yourself and see if you can do it on your own, a little challenge. If you're struggling with it and you can't get it to work, then you can go ahead and watch me and I'll walk you through it step by step. But I really want to see you try it on your own at first, that's how you're really going to get the experience. Trying, failing, experimenting with different things, trying different tools. That's really how you learn anything. So hopefully at this point you've created on your own and you're just checking and verifying with my steps. But if you need the help, again, I'm here for you. So we're going to go ahead and start again on the front plane. So we can hide our top and our right. I don't need those. And we're going to have to start by bringing in that image again, because I'm not an artist. I'm not very good at actually freehanding anything. So I'll need something to use as reference. So I'll create a new sketch, and then I'll import my image. Start at the origin, bring it down. Again, you cannot forget to dimension the image you are going to trace before you actually sketch it. So dimensions, choose the dimension tool, make this 100, confirm that, and then we will create the trace sketch. Alright, so that was pretty much the same thing as what we did in the previous one where we made it solid all the way through. But in order to make this hollow, we're actually only going to really trace like an outline, and then we're going to have to somehow offset that outline. And then we only want the bottom too. We don't want this top part here, so we're not going to actually trace this top part. But either way, we're going to have to start with that rotational axis, the axis we're going to rotate around, which is the one that is right in the center. So just make sure that when you're creating that, the boxes pop up. You're doing a construction line for that one, so it should be the dash line. Remember, it's line and then construction. And now that we've got that construction line, we can go ahead and start to do some of the tracing. So just like when we were doing the solid base, we are going to start with some of the straight lines. So we'll start here. Remember, you're not all the way down the dash line. We need to go to where the image actually starts, and we'll go straight over. And for now, that's the only straight line we really have, because the top, remember, we want that to be open, so we're not going to put a straight line up there. So really, now we just have to go to the outline of this face. So we'll go ahead and use the spline tool, and just like what we did before, we'll trace the outline of the face. Now, when you get to the top, we're going to be stopping at this corner. So as you approach the top, remember, you just click when you have your last point there, and then press escape, and that will finish the spline. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so now that I'm at the top, I press escape to finish that line. And we've got the outline done. Now, we can't rotate just a straight line around an axis. So what we have to do is we actually have to create just a little bit of a thickness to this. And normally if we wanted to do that, we would use the offset tool. But if you try to use the offset tool for this spline, and this happens a lot with different splines, you get this error that says offset failed, one spline generated multiple offset curves, which just means that because this line has all these squiggles, if you try to offset it, they're going to intersect each other. So really the only way we could do it is if it was like a very small offset, like a 0.5 millimeter, and that's not going to be thick enough for our vase. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to use the offset tool. We have to undo that. And instead, we have to do the offset actually on our own by just tracing kind of an inside version of what we traced on the outside. So in order to do that, it's pretty simple. We just use the straight line part to close off any straight line, and then obviously we need to close off this part right here as well. So we've got that little straight line there. And then it's just going to be a spline that goes on the inside of this vase all the way up to the top, and then we'll finish it off with a straight line over here. Now, this is the inside of the vase that we're tracing, so people on the outside wouldn't really be able to see it. The only thing that we need to make sure we leave is enough room to put flowers or whatever inside. So we'll go ahead and go to the spline tool, starting down here, we'll go ahead and start to essentially do what the offset tool does. We're just doing it by hand. Remember, shift is what will get the auto constraints to go away. Alright, now we do want to finish this level with the top of our other spline. So we'll highlight, or we'll hover over the top point, and then when we move over, you can see that it'll be flat. So once I click that final point, remember I press escape, and that'll finish that line. And then I just use my straight line tool to finish this thing off. And now, if we click in the space, we should see that it's highlighted. Okay. Now it looks like up here I probably gave it a little bit too, a little bit too far. So I can adjust these points. But you can get the idea that this is the general shape that we need, and we're going to revolve it around this axis. So once you have this, and when you click on it, it's highlighted, then go ahead and confirm the trace sketch. We can delete the initial picture. Oops. Don't know why that happens. Delete the initial picture. And then remember, there's probably going to be some of these constraints that were constrained to that picture, and it's like, well, you know, we don't have a reference for that anymore. So we can just delete those. We don't need them anymore. Okay. And now we're ready to revolve. So we'll choose the space. We'll choose the revolve tool. And then we need to choose a revolve axis. So we click on this orange space here. We choose our revolve axis. And if we did everything correctly, we should have a nice face. So if we confirm the revolve, you can see we have the space in here. We can even hide the front plane, give us a little bit better idea of what's going on. And so you could put some flowers in here. You could put, you know, whatever you wanted, a different arrangement. And at the same time, if you look at it from the front side or the right side or the back side, it looks like it's two faces looking at each other. So, pretty cool. So at this point, you are finished with this exercise. So go ahead and share this document with me. So remember, my email, amesewicz@crphs.org. I can edit it, make sure you share, and then you are good to go. Again, make sure you have the right naming convention. It is Revolve Demo, then class name, and your last name. Good luck.